Hello students, how are you? I am beginning with another lecture on surface chemistry, electrophoresis. First thing I am going to tell you is electrophoresis. What is the meaning of electrophoresis? I told you that colloidal particles have charge. They are charged particles. Either they carry positive charge or they carry negative charge. So what will happen when an electric potential is applied? When an electric potential is applied to colloidal solution, the colloidal particles are charged particles. As I said, colloidal particles are charged. They have charge, either positive or negative. They have either positive or negative. So what will happen? They will migrate, will move towards opposite charged electrode and get discharged. But I am trying to say that colloidal particles are charged particles, positive or negative. I take two platinum electrodes and I dip the colloidal solution in this and I apply electric potential. What will be the result of that, students? Let me see what I am trying to say. Supposing I have a YouTube. This is my YouTube, students, and here I am putting two electrodes. This is electrode. Here I am putting two electrodes, student. So what will happen if I apply a potential difference? This is my positive, this is my negative. This becomes positive plate, this becomes negative plate. Now you have colloidal solution. Supposing I take arsenic sulfide, it is a negatively charged colloid. We already know about that. When I talked about the charges, I say it is a negatively charged colloidal solution. It is present inside this. So what will happen, that these particles of arsenic sulfide, they are negative. So where will they migrate? When I apply an electric potential, negative will move towards positive, negative will move towards positive. So these are all going to move towards the positive plate, these arsenic sulfide colloidal particles, and what will happen? They will get discharged here and they will accumulate and get accumulated at the positive plate. This process is called electrophoresis. The movement of the colloidal particles when we apply an electric potential by using two platinum electrodes. These are my two platinum electrodes. Then this is negatively charged, it concentrated and moved towards the positive plate. If I take a positively charged colloid like a ferric hydroxide, if I take that solution, it is positive, then it will move towards the negative plate, which is my cathode. So it will move towards the cathode and it move towards the this is negatively charged and it moves towards the anode and got discharged. So this is my electrophoresis. This confirms that colloidal particles are charged. This is very important, that the electrophoresis confirms, electrophoresis phenomena confirms that colloidal particles have charge. That colloidal particles are charged particles. So that is why we talked of electrical properties of the colloids. Second thing I am talking is electroosmosis. Electroosmosis means if the movement of colloidal particles is prevented by suitable means, by suitable method, then what will happen? The dispersion medium is oppositely charged, hence starts moving towards opposite charged electrode. This process is known as electroosmosis. This is called electroosmosis. Now I'm coming to the most important part, which is the topic of the day today, students. What I am talking is the third, coagulation. This is also called precipitation. What I am trying to say that colloidal particles are small particles, the size of which is 1 to 1000 nanometer. So coagulation means that aggregates of colloidal particles to form bigger particles, and they will then settle as precipitate. So this is called precipitation or coagulation of the colloids. The question is, how to do coagulation, or what are the different methods for coagulation. So we have to learn the methods which will be there for coagulation. The first and the most important method I am saying is by addition of electrolyte. Now you already know what is the basic behind this. Colloidal particles are carrying some charge. These are colloidal particles. Supposing I have arsenic sulfide colloidal particles. You know it is a negative charge. There is a negative charge on this, negative charge on this, negative charge on this. So if I add electrolyte, what will happen, students? This electrolyte, for example, if I say NaCl minus, now this has a positive and a negative. So what will happen? These positive ions will neutralize the charge on the colloidal particles. They will neutralize the charge on colloidal particles. If it is negative, positive ions from the electrolyte will neutralize. If it is positive like FeOH3 salts, I'm saying that these salts are positive, carrying positive charge. Now here you will need the negative ions, to neutralize the charge which is present on the surface of the colloidal particles. Once the charge is neutralized, these particles will come together, they will form aggregates, and hence coagulation or precipitation will take place. The precipitation will take place. So this is one of the method, and there is something called coagulating value, or the ions which carry opposite charge to the charge on the colloidal particles are responsible for coagulation. So what we talk of, they are called flocculating ions. Flocculation. The process is called flocculation. Flocculating ions, or we call coagulation. Flocculating ions are those oppositely charged ions, which cause precipitation of colloidal particles. So they call something like a coagulation value, or flocculating values of electrolytes. What it means that we say that the amount in millimoles, I'm saying the amount in millimoles of electrolyte required to completely precipitate, to completely coagulate 1 liter of colloidal solution. That means how much amount you need in millimoles of the electrolyte in order to completely precipitate 1 liter of the colloidal solution. That means when I will say the coagulating power or flocculating power, the more the amount needed to coagulate, lesser is the coagulation power. Lesser is the power. What power? Coagulation power. So if you will need less amount in millimoles to coagulate, then it is having a bigger coagulating power. That's what I am trying to say here. The smaller the amount needed to coagulate the colloidal particles by adding electrolyte, the more is the coagulating power, more is the flocculating power of that electrolyte. So this was one of the methods, student, that the charge on the colloidal particle is neutralized and hence they coagulate by the positively charged ions. Here important thing is a Hardy-Schulze Schulze rule. Hardy performed experiment and studied the coagulating power of different electrolytes. So he said the coagulation is due to coagulation of colloidal particles is due to oppositely charged ions of electrolyte, and the power, the coagulation power, the power which I am saying coagulation power depends on the valence of the ion, of the electrolyte ion involved in the coagulation. For example, I am saying if I have arsenic sulfide, this is negatively charged colloid, and in this case the coagulating power, this will be coagulated by positive ions of electrolyte, and here I can say that aluminium 3 is greater than barium 2 plus, which is greater than sodium plus. The valence of aluminium is 3 plus, so it is more than even 500 times powerful in terms of coagulation than barium 2 plus, and minimum is sodium plus, because the valence, the greater the valence, the more the coagulating power, that's what we are saying. The power depends on the valence. Greater the valence, more coagulating power. Lesser amount of electrolyte will be required. In other words, lesser amount of electrolytes is required. If I take ferric hydroxide sol, this is positively charged, and here you will need negatively charged ions. For example, if I take FeCN64 minus, this is 4 minus, this will be greater than PO4 3 minus, and then I can take SO4 2 minus, which will be greater than Cl minus. So positively charged Sol needs the negatively charged ion to coagulate. The valence, more the coagulating power, lesser the amount required, lesser the amount of the electrolyte required for coagulation. This is the Hardy-Schulze rule, which is very important for the exam student and is asked repeatedly. Okay, so there are some more methods which we use for coagulation. Let us see what are the other methods of coagulation. I am talking of third method, mutual. I am saying mutual precipitation. What it means? That if I have a negative Sol, I mix positive Sol in appropriate proportions, in appropriate amounts, proportions. For example, arsenic sulfide I am saying is negatively charged colloid, negatively charged, and ferric hydroxide I am saying is positively charged colloid. So if you mix the two in appropriate amounts, then what will happen? Coagulation will take place. And this is called mutual precipitation. Positive Sol mix appropriate amount of negative Sol, they will coagulate, they will aggregate, they will form bigger particles and will settle down as solid precipitates. Further students, I am talking of prolonged dialysis. You know that dialysis was used for removal of electrolytes and impurities from colloids by using semi-permeable membrane like parchment paper, etc. So if I use repeated, or what I am saying, prolonged repeated dialysis, what will happen? All the electrolyte will be removed. All the electrolyte is removed. And once the charge is charged, once the charged particles are removed completely from Sol particles, then what will be the result of this? They will coagulate, they will aggregate to form, or what I am saying, coagulate. So this is quite clear to us students, that I have to do repeated prolonged, this is what I am saying, prolonged dialysis. This is example of repeated dialysis. So there is no more electrolyte, as some amount of charge is required for stabilization. If that charge is removed, then they will collapse together, aggregate together, hence will coagulate together. Further, boiling. If you heat the colloids, if you heat the colloidal solution, what will happen? The charge on the particles, on the colloidal particles, will get disturbed, and kinetic energy of solvent molecules increases, or the dispersion medium. So they will hit the particles with greater energy, particles of colloids with greater energy, hence they will disperse the charge, they will disturb the charge, and as a result of which coagulation will take place. As the charge is removed from the colloidal particles due to higher kinetic energy, as the temperature rises, there will be coagulation, student. Seventh, cooling is also used, student. What happens is that if you start cooling the colloidal solutions, cooling the colloidal solution, what will happen? The solvent cools. As the solvent cools or freezes, what will be the result of that? The solvent is separated from the particles, and therefore these particles will aggregate to form what we call as precipitate. For example, if you cool milk, you know the fat in the milk floats on its surface. You know the malai which comes on the milk when you start cooling it. This is a fat which is there, which coagulates on the surface of the milk, because the liquid is the water and the water separates out. So students, last thing which I want to tell you, that lyophobic salts are less stable. Lyophobic salts less stable, and because there is no hydration. There is no hydration because they are solvent dating. But if you have lyophilic salts are more stable because they have charge as well as hydration. So if there is a water or hydrosol, you add a solvent like alcohol or acetone, then this will get coagulated because the solvent is changed. So I am saying change the solvent, then further coagulation takes place, students. So here this is some of the applications. So add alcohol or acetone in hydrosols, the coagulation will take place. Okay student, I will meet you in my next lecture.